There is a memory within you, not stored in the mind, but written in light, a geometry, a rhythm, a forgotten motion. You did not learn it. You carried it here, long before language, before temples, before names were given to gods. There was movement, spinning, a field of light surrounding every soul. Some called it the chariot, some called it the throne, some knew it simply as the Merkaba. But this is not just a symbol, not a myth, not an idea passed down through mystics. It is alive. It is part of you. And once awakened, it changes everything. In this journey, we will remember what the soul never forgot. We will trace the hidden path through ancient texts, sacred geometry, and deep inner truth. And most of all, we will learn how to awaken the light body within, not with force, not with fear, but with breath, presence, and quiet remembrance. So breathe, slow down, and listen. The Merkaba is already spinning, and it has waited long enough. I remember the moment clearly. There was no thunder in the sky, no choir of voices, just a quiet pull in my chest, a strange, unexplainable feeling, like something ancient was knocking from the inside. It came during an ordinary morning. I was sipping coffee, scrolling through headlines, letting my mind drift. But that morning, my eyes paused on a symbol I had seen 100 times before. Two interlocking triangles, spinning in opposite directions. The image wasn't new, but this time, it felt like it was looking back at me. I couldn't explain it. All I knew was that something in me had stirred. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept seeing it. The shape, the movement, like it was burned into the air behind my eyes. And then came the dream. I was standing in the middle of a field of light. The ground beneath me pulsed with patterns, almost like breath. Above, stars twisted like geometry in motion. And in the center of it all, a spinning form. It looked alive, not metal, not stone, but made of light and rhythm. When I woke up, my heart was racing. I didn't have words for it then, but now I know. That was the first time I felt the Merkaba. At the time, I didn't know what it was. I just knew I had to find out. So I searched. I read about sacred geometry. I studied ancient symbols from Egypt, Israel, and Tibet. And everywhere I looked, I saw it, hidden in cathedrals, etched into temple stones, carved into scrolls no one reads anymore. The Merkaba had been there all along, but we had stopped seeing it. That realization broke something open in me. You see, we grow up thinking truth is always revealed through loud voices, books with credentials, or approved rituals, but some truths hide in plain sight, waiting for a quieter part of us to wake up. And the Merkaba is one of them. It is the blueprint of our light, the geometry of the soul, but we have forgotten how to look. When I first started meditating on this symbol, I didn't expect anything dramatic. I just sat with it, every morning, every night, breathing, watching, letting the image move behind my closed eyes. And slowly, the noise began to fade. I noticed things, the way my heartbeat changed when I focused on the shape, the way my thoughts softened, as if something wiser was speaking through the silence. I wasn't becoming someone new. I was remembering who I was before I forgot. That is the quiet power of the Merkaba, not to turn you into someone else, but to remind you of the original architecture already inside you. There was one night, clear in my memory, when something shifted. I was sitting in my room, late, long after the city had gone quiet. I had been breathing, visualizing the star-shaped structure slowly spinning. And for just a moment, I felt something lift, not my body, not my mind, but the weight of forgetting. It was like I had been walking through life asleep with my eyes open, and now something was gently waking me up. And in that stillness, I realized something. The Merkaba was never lost. It had always been there. It was me who had wandered too far. It was me who had stopped listening. That night, I learned a small but unforgettable truth. Some of the deepest truths are not taught. They are remembered, and remembering takes stillness. It takes space, and sometimes it takes a symbol from the stars to lead us home. So if you've ever felt that strange pull, that sense that there's something more just beneath the surface, you're not imagining it, you're hearing the echo of a geometry your soul already knows. And the moment you remember, the moment you begin to listen again, that's when everything begins to shift. Because the Merkaba is not just a shape. It is the moment when your outer world begins to reflect your inner knowing. It is the moment when breath becomes movement and stillness becomes power. It is the moment when you stop seeking truth and start embodying it. In the next part of this journey, we'll look deeper at the true meaning behind this ancient word, where it came from, why it survived, and how, even across thousands of years, the soul still recognizes the sound of its own name. I used to think we were just flesh and thought that all we are is a body moving through time, carrying memories, chasing meaning. But the deeper I listened, not with my ears, but with my whole being, the more I sensed there was something else, something layered beneath the skin, something luminous. That's when I discovered the true meaning of the word Merkaba, not the version found on websites or half remembered from books, but its root, its origin, the sacred trinity hidden inside the name itself. Merkaba. 3 syllables, 3 elements, 3 forces that form the core of your being. Mir means light, not just physical light, but divine illumination, the original pulse that breathes through stars, through time, and through soul. It is the remembering force, the radiant intelligence that awakens dormant parts of who we are. K is spirit, your essence, your spark, not your personality or your name, but the silent observer behind your eyes. It is what remains when everything else falls away. Ba is body, but not just the skin and bones. It's the vessel, the form your soul wears in this world. It's your walk, your tears, your voice in a quiet room. And when these 3 come together, light, spirit, and body, something extraordinary happens, something sacred. They begin to move as one, in harmony, in balance, in memory. This is the Merkaba, not just a symbol or a spinning shape in your meditation, but the living union of all that you are. For the ancient Egyptians, this trinity wasn't abstract. It was the foundation of spiritual life. They believed the Ka was the life force that left the body at death, but could be guided back. The Ba was your soul's unique fingerprint, the part that made you, and Mer was the divine current, the light needed to carry both through the realms beyond. To them, awakening the Merkaba wasn't metaphor, it was instruction, a blueprint for transformation, and it still is. I remember the first time I practiced a Merkaba meditation with this understanding. I didn't just imagine geometry, I sat with the 3 forces. I asked myself gently, where is my light blocked? Where is my spirit hiding? Where have I forgotten this body is sacred? That simple reflection changed everything. I no longer felt disconnected pieces of a self. I felt like a field, a space, where these 3 began dancing again. This union is not about perfection, it's about presence. When your thoughts slow down, when your breath deepens, when you speak to your own body like it is holy, you begin to sense it, that quiet alignment, that gentle power. In those moments, I didn't need a teacher to tell me what Merkaba was. I could feel it, turning, breathing, lifting, and the more I returned to it, the more life began to respond. My energy changed. The room felt different when I walked in. Conversations deepened. I felt more rooted, and yet somehow lighter. That's what happens when light, spirit, and body no longer fight for your attention. When they stop pulling in opposite directions, when they come home to each other. And maybe that's the secret the ancients always tried to preserve. Not to worship symbols, not to chase the stars, but to become the vessel where light lives, spirit moves, and body listens. That's the Merkaba. It's not out there. It's here, waiting for the moment when you stop splitting yourself apart and begin the gentle act of bringing yourself back together. In the next chapter, we'll explore how this sacred union is embedded in geometry, how the soul spins in form, and how ancient patterns still whisper truths through the shape of the Merkaba itself. I did not grow up seeing shapes as sacred. Geometry was something I memorized for tests, not something I felt in my breath or in my bones. But that changed the day I truly saw the Merkaba, not just as a symbol, but as a pattern I could feel pulsing inside me. There is a geometry to the soul, not drawn in ink, but traced in light, and the Merkaba carries one of the oldest blueprints. It begins with the tetrahedron, a simple four-faced shape. 3 points form a base. One rises to the top. It is the most stable structure in nature, the first shape that can hold space in 3 dimensions. Now imagine 2 of these, one pointing upward, one downward, interlocked, rotating in opposite directions. This is the star tetrahedron, the heart of the Merkaba. The upward-facing tetrahedron has always been seen as masculine, solar, fiery, reaching toward the heavens. It represents movement, action, and focused will. The downward-facing tetrahedron is feminine, lunar, watery, descending toward the earth. It holds stillness, intuition, and deep receiving. When the two spin together, they create a field, a balance, a harmony between polarities. And this is not just a theory, it is something you can feel. The first time I visualized it, really visualized it, something inside me stirred. I could almost sense it beginning to move, not outside me, but from within. My breath slowed, my chest opened. There was a quiet hum, like the body remembering its own sacred structure. This shape is not a modern invention. The star tetrahedron appears in ancient art, carved into temples, woven into manuscripts, hidden in plain sight. And if you place it inside a sphere, you get the foundation of something even more profound, the toroidal field, a spiraling, living flow of energy that surrounds every living thing. Scientists now map this same field around the heart, around the planet, even around galaxies. But long before science caught up, mystics already knew. They didn't need machines to measure the energy. They sat still, they listened, and they felt it. This is what sacred geometry teaches us, that the structure of the universe and the structure of the self are reflections of the same intelligence. When you activate your Merkaba, you are not imagining something. You are remembering the architecture of your own soul. Each spin of the tetrahedrons aligns you with a deeper rhythm, the rhythm of creation itself. And here's the part that truly changed how I saw everything. This geometry lives in your energy field, but it also mirrors your inner state. If you are out of balance, if your mind spins one way and your heart another, the field falters, the structure collapses, and life begins to feel heavy. But when you return to breath, to stillness, to alignment, the shape begins to turn again. And with it, clarity returns, peace returns, power returns, because sacred geometry is not something you observe. It is something you live. It is how you walk into a room, how you hold silence, how you respond when the world feels chaotic. And the star tetrahedron, it is not just a beautiful design. It is the compass within your field, guiding you toward balance, toward remembering, toward your center. In the next part of this journey, we will trace how this geometry has moved through time, through prophets, mystics, and seekers, and how the Merkaba was once used as a vehicle of ascension by those who knew how to listen to the patterns of light within. There are stories the world forgets, not because they were lost, but because we stopped knowing how to read them. And yet, they wait, not in museums, but in the silence behind old words, in visions shared by prophets, in symbols passed through breath, not books. I first heard the word chariot in a Sunday sermon. It came from the book of Ezekiel, a vision of fire and wheels, beings of light, a throne suspended in the sky. Back then, it felt like fantasy, too strange, too bright, too far from my world. But years later, as I began working with the Merkaba, that vision came back to me, not as a myth, but as a memory, because Ezekiel didn't just describe a vehicle. He described a structure of movement, of light, of ascension, wheels within wheels, energy spiraling upward, a form lifting the soul beyond the earthly plane. It was a Merkaba, not in name, but in essence. And what's remarkable is that Ezekiel was not alone. Across the world, in a monastery high in the Himalayas, another vision was quietly preserved. The rainbow body of Tibetan mysticism. In this tradition, when a monk reaches the deepest state of spiritual realization, the body itself begins to dissolve, not in death, but in light. The skin fades, the bones vanish, and only rainbows remain. This, too, is a vehicle, not one that carries the soul like a spaceship, but one that becomes the soul, freed of weight, unbound by form. Different language, same message. In ancient India, it was the Vimana, celestial chariots ridden by gods and seers. In Egypt, the Ka and Ba were lifted through the mirror, the light current, to return to the stars. Every culture had a name, every mystic saw a shape, but all pointed to the same reality, that there is a way for the human soul to move beyond this world, not through escape, but through expansion. And what connects all of them is not the promise of flight, but the discipline of presence. Ezekiel didn't summon his vision, he surrendered to it. The monks of Tibet didn't seek the rainbow body through ambition. They lived it, moment by moment, breath by breath. That's what makes the Merkaba different from so many spiritual fads we see today. It isn't about power or status or special access to secret realms. It is a practice of inner geometry, of harmonizing light, spirit, and body, until your very field becomes a vehicle of truth. And when that happens, movement becomes effortless, travel happens without distance, and presence becomes power. I remember reading a story about a monk who spent years in stillness, not seeking visions, but refining his love. At the end of his life, his body shimmered, his scent changed, flowers bloomed where he sat. The villagers said he vanished in light. That is not metaphor. That is memory, held by those who still listen, with the heart. So what does this mean for us? It means we don't need to fly to temples or climb mountains. The chariot is not up there. It is here, already waiting, in the shape of our breath, in the rhythm of our intention, in the geometry of our soul. When you meditate with the Merkaba, when you visualize the star tetrahedron spinning, when you soften the grip of your thoughts and allow stillness to guide you, you begin to move, not your body, not even your spirit, but your field, your memory, your truth. In the next part of this journey, we will leave the stories behind and step into the practice, the breath, the rhythm, the steps to activate the light body within, so that you don't just know the Merkaba, you begin to live it. You can study a map for years, memorize every symbol, trace every path, but until you take the first step, you will never know the terrain beneath your feet. The Merkaba is like that. We can speak of sacred geometry. We can name the elements light, spirit, body. We can trace the lineage through prophets and monks. But at some point, we must close the book, turn off the screen, and sit with ourselves. That is where the real journey begins. For me, it started simply. No incense, no chanting, just a quiet room. And the breath, I didn't know what I was doing, not in the technical sense, but something deeper guided me. I sat with my spine tall, hands resting on my knees, eyes closed, and I began to breathe, slow, rhythmic, intentional, in through the nose, out through the mouth, again and again, letting each breath settle me deeper into the present moment. Then came the visualization. I imagined a tetrahedron, a three-sided pyramid, its point facing upward, resting within my body, masculine energy, solar force, clarity, action. Then I added the second shape, another tetrahedron, this one pointing downward, feminine energy, lunar pull, intuition, stillness. Together, they formed the star tetrahedron, the core structure of the Merkaba, and I saw them spinning, one clockwise, the other counterclockwise, slowly at first, then building rhythm, like a silent engine coming to life. I wasn't trying to force anything. I just breathed and watched, and slowly, something changed. It was subtle, not lightning in the sky, but a shift inside. I felt more present, more full, like I had remembered something ancient, without needing words to explain it. That was the beginning. Later, I would learn about more structured methods, like the 18-breath Merkaba meditation, taught by many modern teachers. Each breath in that practice is intentional, guided, focused on a specific energy center in the body. Some visualize the breath moving through the spine. Some see light spiraling through their chakras. Some work with tones or mudras to deepen the resonance. But for me, it always comes back to this: presence, breath, awareness. Without them, it's just a mental exercise. With them, it becomes a living experience. Over time, I began to feel the field around me, not just in meditation, but in life. When I was walking, speaking, listening, breathing with intention, I would feel it, a subtle hum, a light pressure, like the air itself had become alive, like I was moving inside a cocoon of energy. And when I was aligned, when I wasn't rushing or judging or forgetting myself, that field became stronger, more centered, more radiant. The Merkaba is not a trick. It is not a shortcut to enlightenment. It is a discipline of deep attention, a relationship with your own light. And like any relationship, it grows with care. If you skip the grounding, your energy will feel scattered. If you push too hard, you'll only meet resistance. But if you return again and again, with patience, with humility, something opens. Some people experience visions, some feel spinning, some hear tones, or receive insights that feel like they've come from another realm. And others feel only peace, a kind of peace that does not depend on the world. That alone is enough, because the Merkaba does not promise escape. It offers embodiment. It teaches you to live inside your light, not just when meditating, but in the middle of chaos, grief, or uncertainty. That is real power. And when you begin to taste that, you realize something. The goal is not to leave this world. It is to show up fully in it, with your field intact, your presence grounded, your soul awake. In the next part of our journey, we will explore where the Merkaba can take us, not just energetically, but across the landscapes of memory, consciousness, and what some call the Akashic Records, a space of infinite knowing, where every soul's path has already been written. In light, there are memories that do not live in the mind. They do not come from childhood or from the stories people tell about us. They live deeper, beneath the heartbeat, beyond the nervous system, in the quiet space where the soul listens to itself. Some call this place the Akashic Records, a library not made of walls or words, but of frequency, of light, of timeless truth. I didn't believe in such things at first. The idea that somewhere, everything I had ever done, ever thought, ever felt, was still there, waiting to be read. But then I had a moment, It came after a deep Merkaba meditation, one of those nights when the world is utterly still and your breath feels like it's echoing through eternity. I wasn't trying to reach anything. I wasn't expecting visions. I was simply present. And then a scene appeared, not imagined, not dreamt, but remembered. I saw a place I'd never visited in this life. Stone walls, firelight, a group of people sitting in silence, waiting for something sacred to begin. And I was among them, not watching, but participating. I felt the weight of robes on my shoulders, the coolness of the floor beneath me, the deep sense of responsibility in my chest. And just as quickly as it came, it faded, but the feeling remained, a knowing I could not explain away. That was the first time I touched the edge of the Akasha, not through effort, but through alignment, because the Merkaba is not just a shield. It is a stargate, a structure that allows consciousness to move, not just outward, but inward, across the boundaries of time and space. It spins like a key, unlocking vibrational doors you didn't even know were there. Mystics across traditions have spoken of this. They use different names: the Book of Life, the Cloud of Knowing, the Field of Infinite Memory, but all point to the same truth, that the soul is ancient, and it remembers through the Merkaba. You can access those layers of self, not to escape the present, but to understand it more fully. Because when you touch those memories, you begin to see patterns, wounds repeating, lessons unfinished, gifts you've forgotten how to carry. And this awareness is not abstract, it is healing. I once guided a friend through a Merkaba-based journey. She had been carrying a deep fear of speaking her truth. In meditation, she was shown a life where her voice had once caused harm, a moment of truth that ended in betrayal and pain. Seeing it didn't make her feel guilty. It made her clear. She wept, not from shame, but from the sudden relief of knowing why. And after that, she spoke differently. She walked differently. That is what happens when you reconnect with your deeper story. And the Merkaba, when activated with intention, becomes the bridge. It lifts your frequency to match the subtle fields where these soul memories live. But this journey requires care. The Akashic space is not a place of curiosity. It is a space of reverence. You don't go there to get answers. You go there to receive what your soul is ready to see. That's why grounding is vital, why presence is non-negotiable, and why your heart must lead, not your mind. Because the Merkaba does not respond to control. It responds to alignment. When your breath is steady, when your intention is clear, when your heart is open, the gate opens. And when it does, you are no longer just a seeker. You become a witness, a reader of your own eternal story. So if you have ever felt like a piece of you was missing, if you've carried questions that logic could not answer, if you've sensed there is something older in you than this lifetime, trust that your soul is not bound to this moment. It is layered with many lifetimes, each carrying fragments of wisdom, waiting to return. In the next part of this journey, we'll explore how the Merkaba not only opens the gate, but also protects your field, how it becomes a radiant shield, a force of balance, and a magnet for clarity and connection. In the middle of your everyday life, there's a quiet moment that comes after deep spiritual work, when you open your eyes, stand up from your practice, and step back into the noise of life, the car horns, the emails, the long lines, the energy of others pressing in from every direction. This is where the true impact of the Merkaba begins to show itself, not in visions, but in how you hold your field in the middle of the ordinary. Because the Merkaba is not just a tool for ascension, it is a living architecture of stability. It moves with you, protects you, and magnetizes the world around you, not by effort, but by alignment. I first noticed this after a long period of consistent meditation. Something had shifted. People responded differently, not because I said more, But because I needed to say less, there was a clarity in my presence, a stillness in the way I listened, and that changed everything. You see, the Merkaba is not only a vehicle of light, it is also a shield, a toroidal field that moves with you, gathering energy when needed and filtering what does not belong. We walk through a world full of invisible currents, other people's stress, environments soaked in chaos, old conversations still echoing in the air. When your energy field is dormant, you absorb these things without noticing. You feel drained, irritated, not yourself. But when your Merkaba is active, you feel it coming. The tension, the dissonance, the falsehood. And instead of letting it in, you stay centered, rooted, untouched. Not because you resist, but because you radiate. This is what true protection looks like. It is not defense. It is frequency, a field of coherence that repels what is not aligned without needing to fight. And just as it protects, the Merkaba also amplifies. When your light body is spinning in harmony, you begin to magnetize what matches your inner truth. Conversations deepen, right? People appear. Opportunities unfold without force. You no longer chase energy. You attract it. One of my students once said, "It feels like life is leaning in to meet me now." That is magnetism. It does not mean every day is easy, but it does mean you move through life with presence, with clarity, with a resonance that others feel, even if they can't name it. And perhaps most importantly, your Merkaba becomes your center. In times of uncertainty, when grief comes, when plans fall apart, when fear tries to speak louder than truth, you return to breath, to structure, to the spinning light that never stopped turning. And you remember, you are more than a body. You are a system of energy, a living field of intention. One of the most beautiful effects I've seen is how this changes relationships. When you're grounded in your Merkaba, you no longer pull from others. You don't need them to complete you. You meet them as a whole field. Meeting another field, boundaries become clear, connection becomes clean, and love becomes less about need and more about resonance. That's the quiet gift of this practice. It gives you back to yourself, so that every step you take in the world is guided by a field that is awake, balanced, and magnetically aligned with what truly serves. And the more you live from this place, the more life begins to mirror it back. In the final part of this journey, we'll step into that deeper integration, not just the practice, not just the visions, but the way of living Merkaba every day, with every breath. As the soul in motion, you were always meant to be. There comes a moment after the practices, after the silence, after the visions have faded, when you are asked to return to the world, to your work, to the noise, the routine, the emails, the traffic, the conversations, and it's there, in the middle of it all, that the real question arises: can you carry the light into the ordinary? Because this is what Merkaba truly invites, not just to meditate, not just to travel beyond, but to live fully, presently, as a soul that remembers who it is. You see, the Merkaba is not something you do. It's something you become, a state of coherence, of balance, of clarity that follows you into every moment of your life. It's in the way you speak, with fewer words, but more truth. It's in the way you walk, not faster, but with deeper presence. It's in the way you sit with another human being, not to fix them, not to convince them, but to meet them soul to soul. This is how the light body lives, not floating above the world, but rooted within it, embodied, compassionate, unshakably aligned. I remember a day when this truly landed for me. It wasn't during meditation. It wasn't in the stillness of practice. It was in the middle of a hard conversation. One of those moments when everything in me wanted to react, to defend, to raise my voice, to close my heart. But something else stirred. That spinning stillness I had come to know in meditation rose gently inside me, And instead of reacting, I breathed, I listened, and I responded with truth, but without force. That moment changed everything, because I realized the Merkaba is not just about accessing higher realms. It's about showing up here in the densest places and staying connected to your light. This is what the ancient mystics knew, that to live as a light being is not to escape life, but to enter it more fully, with your soul leading the way, to walk through grief with grace, to face chaos with calm, to meet challenge with grounded knowing. That is the work of the Merkaba. It is not to avoid the fire. It is to carry light into it. And the more you live this way, the more your very presence becomes medicine, a quiet healing, not because you try, but because your field speaks what your words no longer need to. So let the meditation continue. Let the breath deepen. Let the spinning shapes remind you of the perfect balance you hold inside. But more than anything, let the practice walk with you. Let it enter your morning routine, your parenting, your work, your rest, your relationships. Let your Merkaba not just be a vision you visit, but the way you exist. Because the truth is, you are already a light being. The structure is here, the breath is here, the memory is here. All that remains is to live it, to let the light shape your days, to let the geometry of your soul move through time with quiet radiance. So breathe and begin again, not just in stillness, but in the living rhythm of a soul who remembers you were never meant to chase the light. You are meant to become it, to carry it, to live from it. The Merkaba is not a destination. It is a remembering of who you are beneath the noise, of what you carry beyond the body, of the quiet intelligence woven into your breath. So do not rush to awaken. Do not force the spin. Just return, again and again, to the still point within. Let the world move around you. Let the noise pass through you. And know what is real cannot be shaken. Because when your light body moves with you, every step becomes sacred, every word becomes intentional, and every breath becomes home. If this journey spoke to something in you, then you already know this is not the end. It is the beginning of the path you were always meant to walk.